Hi, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to Poem Praise 2. I do thank you for tuning in, and peace and blessings be upon you and your family this evening. Now, we are going to get right back into the great African American women. Today, I have for you Gwendolyn Brooks, poet of the ordinary, which she was born in 1917, June the 7th, 1917, to 2000. And this is a picture of Miss Brooks right there. And this is the information. It reads as follows. Gwendolyn Brooks was the first African American, male or female, to win a Pulitzer Prize. Throughout her career, she has written about ordinary people and events, discovering early that, in her words, what was common could also be a flower. A GB voice is what Brooks herself calls this approach. Although she believes in the power of the ordinary to be both significant and beautiful. According to the critic Jacqueline McLendon, her motivation is not to mythologize. I'm going to spell it for you. mythologize, or to romanticize her characters. She simply writes about black people, not as curious. Gwendolyn Elizabeth Brooks was born in Topeka, Kansas on June the 7th, 1917. The elder of two children of David Anderson Brooks and Keziah Corrine Wims Brooks. Though he worked as a janitor, her father was highly educated, having studied pre-medicine for a year and a half at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. He read stories and sang songs to his children, but it was her mother, a former school teacher, who strongly encouraged Gwendolyn's early literary efforts. I have notebooks dating from the time I was 11. Gwendolyn Brooks later wrote, "When I started to keep my poems in composition books, my mother decided that I was to be the female Paul Laureen Dunbar." Brooks grew up in Chicago, where as a teenager she continued to write poetry. When she was 16, she received encouragement from the poet Langston Hughes, who read some of her poems. After graduating from Inglewood High School, she attended Woodrow Wilson Junior College, graduating in 1936. During the next 2 years, Brooks served as publicity director of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People Youth Council in Chicago. She also wrote poetry with increasing artistry. In 1939, she married Henry Lowington Blakely II, a writer who worked on the Woodrow Wilson Junior College student newspaper, the Wilson Press. The couple had 2 children, Henry Lowington and Nora, Pulitzer Prize winner. During the early 1940s, Brooks devoted increasing effort to gaining recognition as a poet, and by 1945, she had not only written enough poems to complete a book, but also succeeded in having her first collection, A Street in Brazenville, issued by the New York Publishing Company, Harper and Brothers. Although she drew her poetic topics from the black community, Brooks' style at this early stage in her career strongly reflected the techniques of the white poets she had read and studied, from the classical writers Shakespeare, Milton, and Donne, to such modern as Eliot and Pound. She demonstrated a deep knowledge of the various sonnet forms, used alliteration with great wit, and produced subtle rhyme schemes. In 1949, Harper published Brooks' collection, Annie Allen, including the long piece, The Ennead. This volume, too, showed her impressive grasp of complex, stylish traditions. And it was for this work that Brooks received a Pulitzer Prize in 1950, becoming the first black person to win a Pulitzer Prize of any kind. During the 1950s and the 1960s, she continued to publish highly praised books, including Maud Martha in 1953, an autobiographical novel, Brownsville Boys and Girls, 1956, a book of children's poems, and the adult poetry collection, The Bean Eaters, in 1960. In these works, she further developed her art, not just honoring her stylish craft, but also enriching her narrative gift through the use of a wide range of situations and characters, both white and black. In The Bean Eaters, for example, she wrote dramatically well-crafted poems about a murder, the bravura of young black boys, and the visit of a black reporter to Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. A change of style. In 1967, as a result of attending the second Black Writers Conference at Fisk University, Brooks made a distinct change in her writing style. The conference, she explained a few years later, stimulated her through her exposure to young people, full of a new spirit. They seemed stronger and taller, really ready to take on the challenges. I was still saying Negro, for instance. She became determined to write poetry that came nearer to the hearts of her own people. Her first important publication in that new spirit was In the Mecca, 1968, a book of poems exploring the urban black experience. The title poem is a long, poignant narrative work detailing the search for a missing girl named Pepita, and thereby realistically revealing black life and thought in the Mecca, a building crowded with poverty-stricken people. The remainder of the collection consists of short poems, including one dedicated to Medgar Evers and Malcolm X. Beginning with In the Mecca, Brooks consciously strove to write not only about black subject matter, but also to black readers. She streamlined her style and language to appeal directly to ordinary black readers, yet she did not sacrifice her characteristic use of words to convey music, pictures, and complex patterns of meaning. Soon after Harper published In the Mecca, Brooks stopped issuing works through that or any other white publishing company and began to publish exclusively through black companies. Broadside Press, a Michigan-based company started by the black poet Dudley Randall, published her poetry collection, Riot, in 1969, Aloneness, 1971, Beckonings in 1975, in other words, including Report from Part 1, an autobiography, 1972. The Third World Press of Chicago issued to Disembark, in 1981, and Winnie, 1988. And her own David Company published, among other books, Children Coming Home in 1991. Awards and honors. Brooks has received many awards and honors, including honorary degrees from over 50 colleges and universities. And she has taught poetry at many institutions of higher learning, including Columbia College, City College of the City University of New York, and Chicago State University. Besides her Pulitzer Prize for Annie Allen in 1950, she received the Mademoiselle Merit Award for Distinguished Achievement, 1945, for the American Academy of Arts and Letters Award for Creative Writing in 1946, the Eunice Titan Johns and Memorial Prize from Poetry Magazine, 1949, the Thormod Monson Literature Award in 1964, the Anne Isfeld Wolf Award, 1968, the Black Academy of Arts and Letters, 1971, the Shelley Memorial Award, in 1976, the Lifetime Achievement Award of the National Endowment for the Arts in 1989, the Aiken-Taylor Award in 1992, the National Book Foundation Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters in 1994, and the National Medal of Arts in 1995. Among her other honors were being named the Poet Laureate, or Laureate, I'm going to spell that word, Laureate of Illinois in 1968. Being appointed poetry consultant to the Library of Congress in 1985 to 1986. Being inducted in the National Women Hall of Fame in 1988. Becoming the first person to hold the Gwendolyn Brooks Chair in Black Literature and Creative Writing at Chicago State University in 1990. Delivering the Jefferson Lecture in the Humanities for the National Endowment for Humanities in 1994. And having the Gwendolyn Brooks Elementary School of Aurora, Illinois, named after her in 1955. Gwendolyn Brooks has reached extraordinary heights as the poet of the ordinary. Selected writings I have as follows. Fiction, Maud Martha, novel, 1953. Nonfiction, Rapport from Part 1, an autobiography, 1972. Young Poets Primer, Writing Manual, 1981. Very Young Poets, Writing Manual, 1983. Report from Part 2, Autobiography, 1955. And The Poetry, A Street in Brownsville, 1945. Annie Allen, 1949. The Bean Eaters, 1960. In the Mecca, 1968. Riot, 1969. Family Pictures, 1970. Aloneness, 1971. Aurora, 1972. Beckonings, 1975. Primer for Blacks, 1980. To Disembark, 1981. Black Love, 1982. The Near Josenberg Boy and Other Poems, 1987. Gotham Chalk and the Grand Tarantale, 1988. Winnie, 1988. Children Coming Home, 1991. Juvenile Fiction, The Tiger Who Wore White Gloves, or You Are What You Are, 1974. Juvenile Nonfiction, Very Young Poets, Writing Manual, 1983. And Juvenile Poetry, Brazenville, Boys and Girls, 1956. And that does complete Gwendolyn Brooks. Please stay tuned to Poem Praise 2 for our next great African American woman, which is going to be Hallie Q. Brown, internationally renowned speaker. So I want you and your family to be blessed and have a wonderful rest of this evening. Till I speak with you again, it beeth thy will. Peace be upon you. Be well. Take care. Till next time. Later, y'all.